At least, that's what I thought the night was going to be. That's the part I keep coming back to. How completely wrong I was about all of it. It was a Friday in early March. I'd just finished a long week at the distribution warehouse where I work as a floor supervisor, and my buddy Caleb texted me around 6 saying there was a group dinner at Rosario's, this Italian place on Clement Street that we all liked. Nothing fancy. Just a booth, some pasta, a few beers. I said sure. I should have asked more questions. When I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted Caleb's truck already there, Derek's car too, and Mitch's Jeep. I remember thinking it was a bigger group than usual, which was fine. I liked those guys. We'd known each other since our early 20s, and even though we were all pushing 30 now, Friday nights still felt like Friday nights when we were together. I walked in. The hostess pointed me toward the back, past the bar, past the family with the noisy toddler, past the couple sharing a single dessert. Our table was in the corner booth, the long half-circle kind. Everyone was already there. Caleb, Derek, Mitch's girlfriend, Tori, and one empty seat, right next to a woman I didn't recognize. She was sitting very still, the way people sit when they're trying not to look like they're waiting for something. Dark hair pulled back. A green blouse, simple. She had a small purse on the table in front of her like a shield she'd almost forgotten she was holding. I stopped at the edge of the booth. "There he is," Caleb said, and something in his voice, just a half second of something, made my skin go tight. I sat down. Tori introduced us immediately, almost too quickly. "This is Renata," she said. "She works with me at the clinic." I said hello. Renata said hello. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes the way a real smile does. It was the smile of someone being polite in a situation they hadn't fully agreed to. I understood that smile in about 4 minutes. That's how long it took for Derek to excuse himself to go to the bathroom and come back with his phone already unlocked. For Mitch to start looking at something just over my shoulder and then quickly look down. For Caleb to develop this little grin he gets when he thinks something is funny that he's not supposed to say out loud. I'm a floor supervisor. I manage 43 people. My entire job is reading a room. I leaned slightly toward Tori and said quietly, "What is this?" She blinked, looked guilty. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." She opened her mouth, closed it, and then Renata said, still looking at her menu, "They told me you were looking for something casual, that you'd been, how did they put it, quote, striking out for a while." The table went very quiet. I looked at Caleb. He was doing the thing where he pretends to be very interested in the breadsticks. I looked at Derek. He'd set his phone down. He wasn't grinning anymore. I looked at Renata, who was still looking at her menu, but her jaw was set in a way that told me she'd been holding on to that sentence for a while and had decided, just now, to put it on the table instead. "They said that," I said, more or less. I sat back. I took a breath. There was a version of me, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, who would have laughed it off, made a joke, clinked glasses with Caleb, and let the whole thing dissolve into noise. But I was sitting next to a woman who had put on a green blouse and driven to this restaurant on a Friday night because someone she trusted told her this was going to be a real thing, a real dinner, a real introduction, and apparently the joke was her, or me. I still wasn't entirely sure. "Can I ask you something?" I said. Renata finally looked up. "You can try. Did Tori tell you anything real about me? Or just the striking out part?" She thought about it. "She said you were funny. She said you liked the Niners, which she seemed to think was a character flaw." "It is," Tori said, and then immediately looked like she regretted speaking. I nodded slowly. "Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to order the gnocchi, because I've been thinking about it all week. And if you want to have an actual conversation, I'm here for that. And if you want to leave, I completely understand, and I'll walk you to your car." Renata looked at me for a moment. Not the polite smile look, a real look. "The gnocchi's good here," she said. "Best in the city, in my opinion." She closed her menu. "Fine." Caleb started to say something, and I looked at him, just looked at him, and he stopped. The thing about Renata that I didn't know yet, that I wouldn't find out until we were 45 minutes into the most unexpectedly honest conversation I'd had in years, was that she had a daughter. Her name was Blythe. She was 7. She had, according to Renata, a very strong opinion about the correct way to organize crayons, which was by color family and then alphabetically within each family, and she would apparently reorganize anyone else's crayons if given the opportunity. She sounds intense, I said. She's 7, and she's already more organized than I am, Renata said. It's humbling. How long have you been? I started. On my own? 4 years. She was 3. She said it matter-of-factly, the way people say things they've explained many times and have made peace with. Her dad and I, it wasn't dramatic. It just didn't work. He's in Portland now. He visits. It's fine. That's a real word, fine. She tilted her head. It is fine. It could have been worse. It could have been so much worse. Blythe has 2 parents who like each other fine. She's not confused about whether she's loved. She paused. I'm more careful now about what I let into her life. That's the part that changed. I thought about that. What does careful look like? It looks like having dinner with someone for 4 months before Blythe knows his name. It looks like not introducing people as mom's friend. It looks like making sure I know what I'm doing before she does. That sounds exhausting. It's not, actually. It's the opposite. It's clarifying. Caleb, to his credit, had basically been pretending he wasn't there for the past 40 minutes. At some point, he and Derek had started a separate conversation at the other end of the booth about the Warriors, and Tori was on her phone, and Mitch and Denise were in their own world. Which meant that Renata and I had this little pocket of space to ourselves, which I don't think anyone had planned, least of all us. The gnocchi was excellent. She had the salmon. We talked about her work. She was a radiology tech, had been at the same clinic for 6 years, liked the precision of it, the way there was a right answer in the image if you knew how to look. I told her about the warehouse, about the logistics of managing a floor that moved 3,000 packages a day, about the satisfaction of a clean count at the end of a shift. She asked good questions, the kind of questions that meant she was actually listening. At one point she said, "You don't seem like someone who's been striking out. Thank you. I mean that neutrally. You're just normal, like a person. I'll put that on my dating profile." She laughed. A real one. It surprised her, I think. When the check came, I paid my share and hers, and she started to object, and I said, "If I let them set us up like this, and you also have to pay for your own dinner, I'm going to feel bad about it for a week." She thought about that logic and accepted it. We all walked out together. The night air was cool and damp, that particular San Francisco March chill that never quite becomes winter but never lets go of it either. Caleb clapped me on the shoulder as we hit the sidewalk. "So?" he said. I looked at him. "We'll talk," I said. "Not right now." He read something in that and nodded. I walked Renata to her car, which was parked half a block down. She clicked it unlocked and turned to face me. "That wasn't what I expected," she said. "Which part?" "Any of it, honestly," I said. "For what it's worth, whatever Tori told you, whatever the setup was, you didn't deserve to walk into that. That wasn't fair to you." She looked at me for a second. "No," she said. "It wasn't. I'm sorry. You didn't do it. I know. I'm still sorry." She nodded slowly. Then she said, "I'm at the clinic Tuesday and Thursday mornings. The rest of the week I'm more available, if you wanted to, actually get coffee. Without an audience." "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." She got in her car. I stood on the sidewalk and watched her taillights disappear around the corner, and then I stood there for another moment in the quiet, and then I went back to find Caleb. I'm not going to pretend the conversation with him was clean. It wasn't. We stood in the parking lot. Just the 2 of us. Derek and Mitch had already left. Tori was waiting in the car with the heat running, and I told him exactly what I thought. Not loudly. I've never been a loud person when I'm angry. That's actually when I get the quietest. He told me later, that's what made it worse. I said, "You took a woman who has a kid, who is doing this alone, who has to be more careful than you or I have ever had to be about who she lets near her life, and you used her as a punchline. You didn't think about what it felt like for her to walk into that room. You didn't think about her at all." He said he thought it would be funny, that he thought we'd hit it off, that he'd thought, I said, "You thought you'd see my face when I found out. That was the whole thing. You wanted the reaction." He didn't say anything. I said, "I need some time." He nodded. I got in my truck. I didn't talk to Caleb for 11 days. He texted me on day 4 and I read it and didn't respond. On day 9, Derek texted and said Caleb felt bad, which I believed and which wasn't quite the point. On day 11, Caleb texted again, just one line, "I'm sorry. Not a joke. I'm actually sorry." And then, "She seemed cool for what it's worth." I texted back, "She is." And that was where we left it for a while. Coffee was a Wednesday morning in late March, a place called Blue Oak on Irving. Renata was already there when I arrived, which I'd later learn was just how she operated. She was constitutionally incapable of being late to anything. A trait she said came directly from radiology, where being 90 seconds behind could cascade into an entire morning off schedule. She had a cortado. I got a drip coffee, like the boring person I apparently am. She pointed this out. Drip is honest, I said. Drip is beige. I like beige. She looked at me over the rim of her cup like she was deciding something. We talked for 2 hours. I had to leave to get to the warehouse by noon, and she had a school pickup at 3, and we both agreed, without quite saying it, that this had been an uncommonly good 2 hours. We did it again 2 weeks later. Then the week after that, we walked along the Embarcadero on a Saturday morning, just walked and talked, no agenda. And she told me more about Blythe, the crayon system, the phase she'd gone through where she only answered to her middle name, Frances, for a period of 6 weeks, the way she'd decided at age 5 that thunderstorms were the sky clearing its throat and had refused to be scared of them since. She sounds like a whole person, I said. She really is. That's the thing about kids that nobody tells you. They're not waiting to become people. They already are. I thought about that for a long time after. I was not in Blythe's life yet. That wasn't something Renata was rushing, and I understood it, and I respected it more than I knew how to say. I was still the person whose name Renata knew. That was enough for that part. What I had was this. Wednesday mornings when the schedules aligned, Saturday walks. The occasional dinner after her pickup when Blythe was at her dad's for the weekend. Phone calls that started practical and became something else. The slow accumulation of small things, the way she took her coffee, the fact that she cried at nature documentaries, but not sad movies, the specific kind of silence she had when she was thinking through something difficult. I fell for her, the way you fall when you don't see the step. Not dramatically, just suddenly you're lower than you were. 3 months in, she called me on a Thursday afternoon. I could tell immediately something was off. I need to tell you something, she said. I went still. In my experience, sentences that start that way carry weight. Blythe asked about you. I let that land. Okay. She doesn't know your name. She knows I've been seeing someone. She's 7, not oblivious. She asked if you were nice. What did you tell her? I told her yes. I told her you were very boring and you drank beige coffee. I laughed before I could stop myself. She wants to meet you, Renata said. I want to be clear. This is her asking, not me pushing. She's very particular about who she wants in her orbit. She told me, and I'm quoting directly, that she needed to check you out. That's terrifying, I said. It should be. She's thorough. What does being checked out involve? She wants to go to the park. She says parks are good for understanding how people actually are. She's 7, and she already has a theory about this. I thought about it. I thought about Renata standing in the parking lot on Clement Street 3 months ago, asking if the gnocchi was good. I thought about the kind of careful she'd described. Not cautious in a scared way, but deliberate in a loving one. Tell me which park, I said. It was a Saturday in June. Dolores Park, late morning. Renata was already there. Of course, with a kid who had her mother's dark hair, and I would discover within approximately 45 seconds a thoroughness of gaze that I had genuinely not been prepared for. Blythe looked at me from the bench where she was sitting and said, "You're taller than I thought. Is that good or bad?" She considered this with genuine seriousness. Neutral, she said. I don't have a preference about tall, fair. Do you know how to pump on the swings? I do. Some adults don't. They just push kids, which is fine, but it's better to know. Agreed. She hopped off the bench and started toward the swing set, and after a moment's pause, she said, over her shoulder, without looking back, "Come on then." Renata, standing 2 feet behind me, made a sound that might have been a laugh she was trying to keep small. We spent 2 hours at that park. Blythe instructed me on the correct way to do the monkey bars, which apparently involved a specific grip that most people got wrong. She told me about her class at school and her teacher, Mrs. Okonkwo, who she described as excellent but strict about pencil grip. She quizzed me on state capitals for reasons she didn't explain and accepted my failures on Montana and Delaware without judgment. She showed me her current system for the small bag of colored pencils she'd brought, which was, as promised, organized by color family and then alphabetically. "Who taught you that?" I asked. "I figured it out," she said matter-of-factly. "Organization is just logic. You look at the things you have, and you find the pattern that makes the most sense. I looked at Renata, who was sitting on the blanket they'd brought, watching us with her knees pulled up and her arms wrapped around them. She caught my look and gave me the smallest possible smile. Before we left, when Renata had gone to the restroom and it was just Blythe and me standing by the water fountain, she looked up at me with those considering eyes and said, "You're okay." "High praise," I said. "It is from me," she said simply. "I don't say things I don't mean. I'll remember that." She nodded, like we'd completed a transaction, and then Renata came back, and we walked to their car together, and I stood on the sidewalk and watched them drive away, and I had the strangest feeling. Not romantic. Not something I could easily name, just the feeling of being somewhere real, somewhere that had actual weight. I texted Renata that night. She's incredible. She wrote back, "Don't tell her that. Her head's already a reasonable size and I'd like to keep it that way." But yeah, she is. Then, after a long pause, she told me you were okay. That's basically a 5-star review from her. I stared at my phone for a while. Then I wrote, "I think I'm in this." She didn't write back immediately. I put my phone down and made a sandwich and watched part of a game and tried not to be that guy who checks his phone every 3 minutes. I mostly succeeded when she wrote back it was close to 11, and the message said, "I know. I think I am, too. And I need you to understand what that means for me. It's not just me. I know. If you're in for all of it, not just the Saturday mornings. All of it." I typed back, "I understand that. I want all of it." There was a pause. Then, "Okay, then, good, then, go to sleep, you have work tomorrow." I reconciled with Caleb fully about 6 months after the Rosario's dinner. It didn't happen with a big conversation or a formal clearing of the air. It happened the way most things happen between guys who've been friends for years, which is that enough time passed and then we were watching a game at his place and at some point it was just gone. Still there in the background somewhere. A scar that we both knew was there, but not a wound anymore. He asked about Renata once, just once, and I told him it was going well, and he said he was glad, and I could tell he meant it, and that was enough. Mitch and Derek were easier. They'd been on the edge of the whole thing, not the architects of it. Tori took longer. She and Renata had a real conversation that I wasn't part of, that Renata described to me only as necessary and fine, which was enough information. The joke in the end landed nowhere. It just dissolved. The way bad things do when you refuse to let them calcify into stories you carry around. I've been thinking lately about what it takes to walk into a room where you know the ground might be uneven. Renata did that on a Friday in March, in a green blouse, with her small purse, held like a shield she'd almost forgotten she was carrying. She walked in because someone she trusted told her to, and the situation was not what she'd been told, and she stayed because, I don't know exactly why. Maybe because the gnocchi was good. Maybe because she decided to look at who I actually was before she decided I wasn't worth the trouble. That's what I come back to, more than the dinner, more than the park, more than any of it. The decision to look first. The decision to not let someone else's carelessness become the final word on the situation. I have a daughter who isn't mine biologically and who would be offended if I said it that way because she considers the category of mine to be a matter of proof, not biology. And she has, at 9 years old, explained this to me with a thoroughness that left me with very little to add. She still reorganizes crayons. She still has strong opinions about everything. She still has her mother's particular kind of stillness when she's deciding something. And sometimes, when she's working at the kitchen table on whatever project she's decided needs to exist this week, she'll look up and say, not with any great emotion, just as a statement of fact, "You're still here." And I'll say, "Yeah," and she'll nod, satisfied, and go back to her work, like it's the most normal thing in the world. Because it is.